Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Michael Noland here, and tonight I welcome to Mount Rock Olympus, Jethro Tull. I'm going to review their very first true masterpiece, Aqualung. But first, I would be totally remiss if I did not give this shout out. A big thank you to Wayne over at Slipstream Bro. Now, first of all, I've been a fan of Wayne's and a subscriber to his channel, I think before he even knew I existed. I was directed over to his channel, and again, thank you, Helene, by one of our commenters. And I was an instant fan. I subscribed immediately, and I'll tell you why. This guy has got a pair of ears on him. As he does his reaction videos to almost anything to have to do with classic rock, you can see his mind working. You know, my thoughts on this music isn't something that I've come up with overnight. My thoughts, my impressions have been made over decades of listening to this wonderful music, and I can tell when a fellow fan really gets it, and this guy gets it on so many levels. But anyway, a really big thank you, Wayne. I do appreciate you featuring the channel again. Now we'll get into the meat of the video here, but I also want to mention Royce in the house again, as I have in the past. You know, he invited me on to one of his live broadcasts the other night, and so we got a chance to talk online, him, myself, and drummer Lou Mars, who's currently very active in the music industry. Okay, so as I've recommended several times, I'm recommending you give his channel a view, give the man some love. He really is working hard these days, and you know what? He's going to even shorten his videos, I think. That's what we discuss in the video. If you go over there, don't be surprised if I'm not on right away. I come in later. By the time I could get my iPad hooked up and join in on the conversation, we were toward the end of his broadcast. But he always uploads these videos, and that conversation is on his latest video. Anyway, I just want to say thanks to you, Royce, for inviting me on. I enjoyed the whole thing. All right, so that's enough channel business for now. Let's go ahead and get into my review, my track-by-track analysis of Jethro Tull's first, in my opinion, masterpiece, Aqualung. All right, so Aqualung was initially released on March 19th, 1971. It was recorded primarily at Island Records in London. And by later interviews by Ian Anderson, this was a time where they shared those recording facilities with Led Zeppelin, who was using the much preferred and smaller studio to achieve the amazing sounds that they got on their Led Zeppelin 4 album. Of course, this left the less preferred and much larger studio to Jethro Tull. And really, in later interviews, all band members all agreed that taming the sound in that studio was a chore. Now, many critics and fans alike see this wonderful album as a concept album. However, Ian Anderson has many times denied that this was ever to be a concept album. Now, he's the writer of the album. He ought to know, right? But you know, this is where I disagree with him. I understand that consciously he did not try to put out a concept album. I believe him, right? But then you have to ask yourself, why the cover? And why are there characters sprinkled throughout the album kind of represented by that cover? Now, of course, the cover was a portrait that was commissioned by Ian and his wife based on one of her several photographs of homeless people on the Thames. And there's even slight reason to believe that Ian Anderson may have actually posed for the painting, but there are claims contrariwise to that belief. But it's not just the album cover. Take a look at the disc itself. There's no side 1 and side 2. No, there's side Aqualung and side My God. So you've got at least 2 identified themes there. You've at least got a concept on this side and a concept on that side, right? But it goes further than that. You know, on side Aqualung, we see fractured people, right? But there are spiritual musings sprinkled on that entire side. And on the My God side, a lot of songs spiritually based, right? And yet sprinkled through that side, we see fractured humanity once again. What does this create? This creates a yin and a yang. This approach to the album unifies both sides, if you ask me. So whether it was a conscious decision or a subconscious decision, this album, as far as I'm concerned, is indeed a concept album. And I will explain precisely why I believe that as we go through this album, track by track. All right, track 1. Aqualung. All right, so right away we get a pretty good idea who this fictional character Aqualung is. He hasn't got a lot of saving graces, does he? In fact, he's quite despicable in his own way. A homeless man, no doubt, but lecherous nevertheless. Here we see the character is drying in the cold sun, and his eyes are focused on what they shouldn't be focused on. And yet what do we see? While he's concerned with these trivial things, he's also spitting out pieces of his broken luck. Is this man losing his teeth because of his very lifestyle? Or is spitting out pieces of broken luck him actually coughing up blood? We see he's in dire straits here. He's in a lot of pain, right? But at 1 minute and 3 seconds, the whole song becomes very acoustic. And note what happens with Ian Anderson's voice here. It is so far down in the mix, but it's very expressive because there's tons of delay on his voice, isn't there? This gives the new narrator an identity, doesn't it? Is it the ghost of when he was younger, when things made sense, when he was a better man? Because you know, this whole part of the song, it sounds like Schmeagol on Lord of the Rings consoling himself, doesn't it? But then the band gets back into it and a new narrator comes in, still with plenty of delay on his voice, but he's more upfront in the mix now. And this voice, in my opinion, still an inner thought balloon for the character Aqualung, is incriminating him and even telling him, "You'll die tonight." After all the character goes through, in the end of the song, he's right back to the despicable things that he was doing when we were introduced to the character at the beginning of the song. Is there no redemption for Aqualung? Now, it's hard to not call this a concept album when the very next song, Cross-Eyed Mary, has Aqualung in the song as a character. So the story continues, doesn't it? And who is Cross-Eyed Mary? Well, we know at one point that she's dropped off at school by the jackknifed barber. Of course, this is an old colloquialism for someone who performs illegal abortions. Yet he drops her off at school and she runs and plays in the playground. Is this girl as young as a pre-teen? And yet we see not only has she been sexually active, but she continues to be. And she'll do it for a song. And she would even much prefer to make it with a Leching Gray, leaving her, of course, with no desires to have anything to do with males nearer to her own age. She practically gives it away free to those who barely can pay her for it. But there's a hint that she robs the rich here, doesn't she? Is she possibly even involved in some sort of blackmailing scheme? And this is how she makes up all that she loses out on the street day to day. Now, the album also includes 4 songs that are more personal musings from Ian Anderson himself. 3 of those 4 songs are right here on the first side of the album, and interestingly, these 3 songs are strung together, one after another, aren't they? The first of these, of course, is Cheap Day Return. Ian wrote this song after a short visit with his father while his father was sick in the hospital. He was treated like a king by the nurse. She even made him tea, as the song indicates, but she also asked for his autograph. and this left him wondering on his way back home whether his father was getting the treatment and the respect that he needed at this stage in his life. All right, that leads us to the next track, Mother Goose. Now, I really love this song, and for the same reasons I love Led Zeppelin's Misty Mountain Hop. In that song, the narrator takes us on several trips and the people that he meets, but as the end of the song indicates, he needs to escape all of that in the end, and he needs to escape to the Misty Mountains, doesn't he? As the narrator of this song, Ian takes on a similar role. He wrote this song either after a walk or several walks through Hampstead Fair. I almost hear a psychedelic approach as he gives all of these characters that he meets different strange yet familiar identities. But how does he react to all of these people? Does he feel a need to escape because they're of the strange, the bizarre? No, he joins in because they didn't know he was Long John Silver. This narrator decides to join the party, doesn't he? Two songs with a completely similar approach with two different results. I love it. All right, so that leads us to Wondering Aloud. I love this song. This is a song about a couple who are deep in the throes of first love. They've just experienced the most wonderful romantic evening of their lives. It's the following morning, and the narrator is now coming to the realization that to keep this love alive, that neither one of them should rely on the other to save them, but that it's only through giving that they have a chance to maintain this level of love. And of course, this is brought out by the narrator in the song wondering how the years would treat the both of them. A wonderful song, and one of my very favorites on this album. All right, so side one, or side Aqualung, ends with Up to Me. Now, two out of the last three songs we've just discussed are more spiritual musings. There's the yang to this side's yin. But of course, in the closing track, Jethro Tull takes on what side one is all about once again, this time meeting characters just like he did in the last song. But this time, these characters are mad. They're mentally ill, and some of them are actually functionally mentally ill, yet productive in society, getting their way, while others are instantly recognized as madmen or mad women, right? But either way, no matter how you translate this song, we see more of fractured humanity, no doubt. All right, so that brings us to side two, or side My God, and of course it opens up with the song My God. This is a song of reasoning. This is a song of pleading. This is even a song of accusation, isn't it? This is Ian Anderson's thoughts on organized religion, specifically organized Christian religions in England at the time. The narrator of the song pleads with those who would listen that they are making a mockery of God by the very nature of their worship. He calls into question not only those who attend these services, but those who conduct them as well. Who is this man who listens to an endless line of confessions that sounds like whining to his ears? All right, so the next track up is Hymn 43, and here we see that Ian Anderson is calling to the floor all of those who claim to be Christian, but for some reason even believe that their questionable business practices are backed by God Himself, that even their violent crimes are backed in some weird, twisted way. In other words, they are the elite on earth and they have God's backing. One verse even taking on the whole concept of manifest destiny, and we always know where that leads, don't we? Okay, next up, Slipstream. Now, a lot of people have suspected that this is a song that Ian Anderson wrote after his father died. But you know, I hear a more universal theme here. What is this lush separation? Is that the separation between the haves and the have-nots? And you know, what is that separation? Is it money or all the things that money can buy that propels those people, the haves, into a faster slipstream? And who is this waiter of God in this song? Is he a church representative wrongly taking money from those who have lived a life of crime, those who think they can buy themselves some sort of redemption? All right, now, like I said, both sides have aspects of the other side. It's in this next song that we revisit fractured humanity. My favorite cut on this album, Locomotive Breath. Now, it's interesting with this song. Ian Anderson, on several occasions, has said that this was a song about overpopulation, an ongoing concern at the time. But you know, try as I might, I don't hear that in this song. I hear a story about a man who did all the right things. He had an upwardly mobile life. He had a wife. He had children. And what happens? He finds his woman in bed with his best friend, and his children drop off station by station, one by one. His life has become totally unmanageable, and he's at the very mercy. The train here that won't slow down is his entire horrible situation that he's dealing with. And who is his best friend? Well, who stole the brake handle? Charlie. He's identified here, isn't he? As the song continues, the train just gets more and more out of control, with the narrator actually wishing for it to be out of control. He just wants to end it all. Of course, the album winds up with the song Wind Up, and I love this song. This song, for me, puts this whole album into perspective. Here, the narrator of the song questions everything he's been taught, not only in school, but by the very church itself. And he's come to some conclusions. He feels they've all got it all wrong, that going to church every Sunday doesn't necessarily have anything to do with worshiping the true God. After all, he's not the kind of God you wind up on Sundays. All right, so I told you I had some thoughts on this entire album that are a bit different from what I've heard other folks when they've discussed this album. You see, like I've said before, I believe Ian Anderson. I don't think he consciously set out to create a concept album, but I think that's what he subconsciously did. And let me explain my reasonings here. You know, when I listen to this album, it's side 2 that explains side 1. Here we see the younger Aqualung, a very young Aqualung who has an education and is questioning that very education. Locomotive Breath tells us what happened to this man and how he became the man we're introduced to on side 1. And it's this younger voice in the song Aqualung that he hears with that delay, that almost ghostly voice, him from the past when he was still a good man. And the stronger, delayed voice is that part of him that condemns himself. But he makes it through another night, and he just doesn't have or doesn't care enough to turn his life around. Now, peppered with all of the other songs and the fractured human beings we see on this album, we can see a connection, can't we? And the 4 songs that I've identified as Ian Anderson's personal musings merely drags him, whether subconsciously or not, as the prime character on this album. He is observing all of this, just like he observed his wife's original photographs of the homeless on the Thames. You know, I honestly believe this album is true art, just like the 7 masterpieces by Led Zeppelin that I've already featured, and just like Pink Floyd's magnificent Dark Side of the Moon. This album stands on that level, if you ask me. You know, to me, true art transcends the original artist's intention. Either way, it's not only just another masterpiece of classic rock, it is an album that will definitely at least get you thinking. All right, so that about covers it for tonight's video. I just want to let you guys know I've got some great videos coming up. I'm going to be getting into the Led Zeppelin story, and I'm going to do it from a different take, and I hope you guys are going to be there for those videos. If you're seeing any names in front of me, that's because we have some new subscribers, and I want to welcome every single one of you. You know, the channel has grown so much, especially in the last 3 months. We've already hit our first 1,000 subscribers. In fact, as of tonight, we are at 1,029 subscribers. A big thank you to every single one of you who have joined the tribe. And if you haven't yet, every single one of those folks that you're seeing, here's what they did. They hit that subscribe to the tribe button, then they hit the top bell notification, and guess what I did? I made sure that they were notified of all my future videos. All right, so that covers it for tonight. I'm Michael Noland. This is The Bottom Line, and I'll see you in my next video.